There's billions and billions of dollars still being left on the table for professional sports franchises not properly monetizing their reach and engagement. Welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. And, we do these breakdowns of league reports. We'll do it across the sports ecosystem. We'll get more granular, whether it's the NBA, the NFL, the WNBA. And this show is all about breaking down the 2025 season in the NFL. So I'm so excited to dig into this. And one of our partners, Zoomf, and one of my, it's really your favorite industry friend's favorite industry friend, Dan LaRocca. We worked together way back in the day at the Carolina Panthers, and you recently were at the Carolina Hurricanes, but now the head of marketing at Zoomf. Dan, it's so fun just to talk shop with you, man. Let's get into it.
Likewise, Dave. It's a heck of an intro, so thank you for the kind words, and really happy to be here and always love our conversation. So I think this will be a lot of fun.
All your time you spent at the Carolina Panthers, which it's funny. You and I always joke, I think, did we invent live coverage as we know it in the NFL together? Because, the NFL, I think, banned us from, posting GIFs and highlights back in the day. But now it's just, I think it's part of the social 101 on how you cover live events. But going all the way back like 10 years ago, it was innovative, man.
Yeah. On a lot of levels, we were doing things a little bit differently, and working with y'all really opened us up to so many new possibilities, and the numbers we put up, goodness, on the social side were really, really strong. Especially, look, it was 2015 season, the
15-1,
so that helped. But boy, were we able to capitalize on that. Before that season, the Panthers were, I think, in the bottom 10 of like social audience size, and by the time the both of us got done with that season, we were in the top 10 in all pro sports. And I don't use audience size as much as any more growth, but the engagement numbers we put up were wild, and we could not have capitalized the same way without the great work you and your team did back then. So.
No, we appreciate it. I think there were some months we were gaining like 500,000 followers a month on Twitter because of all the dabbing and all the virality that came out of that. So exciting stuff. But why I'm so excited to talk to you about this NFL report is obviously you can speak out it from your current role at Zoomf. But I'm curious to dig in. Again, you were at the Carolina Hurricanes as well for 6 seasons. That's a lifetime in sports, but
especially in hockey.
Yeah, as a vice president of marketing and brand strategy, I want you to give me a glimpse as in that role, if you were to see this podcast or download this report and see these macro trends, just how you would take the data, how would you maybe, as you look at yourself across the playing field, just like how someone in that seat will think about it, because I think that's going to give a lot of the listeners who are in that seat just some perspective, especially from somebody like you who's worked across the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, et cetera. So with that being said, man, I'm excited to dig in here.
Yeah, no, same here. I think we'll both have some great perspective to share, and I'm excited to dive in.
All right. So if you're watching on YouTube, we will be pulling up this report as we're talking about it. Lindsay, our producer, is going to be walking through the different pages so Dan and I can speak to it. And you can, of course, download this downloadable, the full PDF in the show notes or in the YouTube description. Just go ahead and get that so you can follow along. So I want to start, Dan, real quickly before we get into all this data. One thing that we did in terms of ranking these teams against each other was the total social value. So can you break down for the listener how Zoomf breaks down social value on a post-by-post basis and also at a macro level?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite metrics and one I used a ton for a bunch of different ways at the Hurricanes. But essentially, social value factors in content performance, like impressions and engagements, the ones that are specific to each platform, and ultimately runs it against industry advertising rates in order to create a media value equivalency. So you can have a better understanding of the value that your social content is producing. So in a shorter form there, it's like, hey, we could spend $100,000 on ads on Instagram to reach a certain audience and have this certain kind of performance. Or we can build really strong, engaging content and reach that same audience there. So it's a way to quantify performance a little bit differently than we're used to with the traditional metrics.
Yep.
And one that I think a lot of senior executives can understand a little bit more than things like impressions or engagements per post, which are all valuable when you're kind of in that strategy and execution phase. But when you need to make a case to add staff or make an investment in a group like STN, and you need to be able to show like, hey, are we driving enough value here? Are we not driving enough value? Where is it coming from? And how can we make it relative to what advertising rates are? So it's a powerful metric in that sense.
Yeah, and another way to put that too is you just look at an industry average on a cost per engagement, a cost per view. If the industry average for sports is 5 cents per 1,000 views, well, if you get 1 million organic views, you can start to do that correlation. So you'll start to notice as we break down these numbers exactly what that looks like, because these teams and at this league level, I mean, as we go into the next slide, the state of NFL social is very healthy. I know we had that op-ed. If you go to the next, yeah, we go. The data snapshot for looking at the NFL platforms. I do want to mention as well that we don't have TikTok in this, just because of there's an API. I guess you could speak more on that, Dan, why TikTok isn't included in the numbers as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to be introducing that real soon into sort of our benchmark reporting. So where we pull this data from ultimately is the Zoom benchmark tool. If y'all remember CrowdTangle back in the day, like that, but times a million. So it's a great tool for seeing how you rank and compare to anybody, really, whether it's owned or earned content, and they're building reports that way, and also seeing everything they post. But yeah, certain APIs are a little bit more tough than others, and this is one, TikTok's one you want to get right. So our product team's done an unbelievable job, and we're close to launching that one. So in future reports, like the next one we all do together, should be in there. So certainly something to take into account, because that is a very powerful platform and one that NFL clubs are using.
Yes.
We have data on it from all our NFL customers, but that's authenticated data. We want some of that unauthenticated one.
So don't get mad at us if you're the LA Rams, for example, who do a great job on TikTok. You're like, hey, wait a second, like we would be in this top 10. I know, but we are looking at Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. But look at these numbers for a second, just across those 4 platforms: $1.5 billion in total social value generated, over 1.29 billion total engagements, 164,000 different posts that hit those feeds, for a total of 41.7 billion total views. Incredible. I will say this percentage distribution, one thing that I was somewhat surprised on. I think Twitter obviously is no longer at its peak, in my opinion, in terms of, I guess, how much resources are going towards it, but still holds the candle as that water cooler, real-time live platform. And then, YouTube, I think we'll talk about this a lot during the show, but, back when we worked together, Dan, like 10 years ago, YouTube wasn't even something that we were working on game day or really at all. And to see that at 34% now, right up there with Facebook and that of Twitter, super, super interesting, as that's just become more of a game and more of a platform to focus on.
It's incredibly powerful. And even beyond the social value metrics that we have here, the SEO benefits of it, the audience and the different demographics.
It's the number 3 website in the world, no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a worthwhile investment for sure.
All right, let's dive into the league account. So looking at the @NFL, interesting. There's a lot of numbers on this page, but I want to point out a few things and also get your thoughts, Dan. So organic posts down 25%. Again, that might be the fact that TikTok is not included in this. If I had to guess, the NFL putting more resources, more posts in TikTok, maybe taking away from Twitter, et cetera. I will say from the engagement standpoint, though, going down 10% there, that may just be the Saquon backwards hurdle alone. I mean, and honestly, those virality moments or viral moments can really swing these year-over-year numbers, as you know more than anybody. Going back to the earlier in the show, we talked about once you have a 15-1 season and once the dab is invented, the year-over-year numbers from then on forward are very difficult to hold a candle to. So I thought that was interesting, just looking at year-over-year on these 4 platforms at the league level.
Absolutely. There's always going to be changes from year to year based on what happens on the field, off the field, what trending stories there are, what moments there are to capitalize on. So I tend not to give too much stock to the little changes like that. Things like post-platform trends and social value trends certainly look a little bit more deeply at. But something like the post volume, for example, I see it is down 25%. I'm sure TikTok is a factor there. But as you mentioned too about X, the nature of that platform has changed a whole lot too. And what it once was 10 years ago is not what it is anymore. So I would I anticipate we'll continue to see changes year to year, like this. But the platform ones are always the ones that jump out at me. And even things like engagements. A 10% change to me, I wouldn't worry about for a second. But if it's something like 50, then you got a problem. But they're small enough. To your point, that's one probably really, really big moment. And Lord knows the NFL has plenty of them, but you can't anticipate all of them, and you can't bank on lightning striking a bunch of times every year.
Also, let's not forget the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelsey stuff that happened last year. That might be just, if you look at the data, guarantee you that was a big driver in having a historic year last year for the NFL. So I'm interested, again, put me back in your brain at the Hurricanes or Panthers as we go through this section here at the bottom. Post breakdown, that was interesting. Again, X and Twitter, 39%. So it carried the total post volume across these four platforms. But then go to the very next column. Twitter at 39%, only 5% of the total engagements. Instagram at 23%, but carries 76% of the engagements. If I'm in your seat, Dan, I'm telling my team, why don't we put more resources, post, and effort towards Instagram? Because there's more fish in that pond and more potential at engagement. But walk me through your thoughts if you're in that seat at an NFL team.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I'm looking at too is just a lot of people have said Facebook is sort of dead over the past couple of years, and I don't agree with that at all. And I think not just in this report, and a lot of other reports we've done for customers and projects we've done, we've seen that Facebook is still driving a ton of views, a ton of engagements,
especially from a global standpoint too. It's huge.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Back in 2013, like I was building our entire strategy around Facebook. And then of course it kind of morphed into Twitter. And then, with the Canes in 2018 and beyond, a lot of our brand sort of reinvigoration was focused on Twitter and the voice there. But things change fast, and they change even faster now in social. So looking at some of these numbers, you can see some of these trends where, look, Twitter still, or X is still the place that you go to when something big happens in that real time. But the nature of the algorithm means that perhaps stuff is getting surfaced a little less. So people are posting more, but they may not be seeing the same amount of stuff the same way they used to. And I think that is reflected in some of the engagement and social value numbers there. Still a valuable and important platform that's really great for two-way communication, and it's great for amplification too. There's the way that the retweet works. It's always been something that is special and unique. And yeah, Instagram has similar functionality and Facebook does, but the retweet is something, or the repost is something that's incredibly valuable. But Facebook obviously is another big piece there. And yeah, we're seeing low engagements on YouTube, but that to me is more of an analytics thing. Views are the key engagement there. Yes, likes, and there's other things and comments. We track all of that. But for the sake of this high level report, this obviously tells a different story, but that's where data is great. We have this upper level to at least signal to look at things, and whether they're high or they're low, or they're like, okay, we want to gut check this. Getting more granular with the data is the real key there, and looking at, well, what little things can we pull out to see where we can get better, zig where others are zagging,
right,
or understand how to capitalize more on certain trends. So the post breakdown, not as surprising, also kind of consistent with what we've seen in other leagues. And then on the
it's also a lot easier to do a written text tweet than it is to create a 60-second reel, right? So just the pure metrics of quote unquote post, the level of effort a lot easier on X and Twitter, right?
Exactly right. And Threads for that matter too. So I do think we're going to continue to see more and more impact in terms of vertical video, whether it be through YouTube. A lot of that value that we see there is through shorts, and a lot of the value that we see on Facebook too is from Facebook Reels. So that vertical video trend is not going away anytime. I know we'll dive into it later on, but to me, that's another big takeaway here is we understand that a lot of that value does come from vertical video content.
And you mentioned YouTube, again, 2% of total engagements for the league, but look over to the right there. The social value by network, YouTube takes the cake at 41%. So although to your point, YouTube not carrying any really of the weight of the total engagements, it's carrying a majority of the weight for the social value, which you mentioned, the video views, and really how that platform's able to take something and run with it. I've been saying forever that I still think teams and brands, the most undervalued platform. There's still some professional teams out there, Dan, that aren't posting at all on YouTube Shorts, and what an amazing platform that you're missing out on, because it's been now 2, 3, 4 years now. We've been screaming from the rooftops of post your TikToks and your Reels to YouTube Shorts, at the very least, cross post, much like you do Facebook Reels. And still a lot of brands are not taking that extra effort, and there could be a lot of reward at the end of that. So,
No, absolutely agree.
Okay, so then going to the next slide, Lindsay, we have the league-owned summary, the number one most social valued post across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. But I do want to get in to the team ranking slide. This will be where we spend a lot of our time here, Dan, on the social summaries. There it is. Okay, so this is my favorite slide of every deck that we do together, which is really looking at the top 16 teams in terms of total social value. So we're not ranking these teams on total amount of volume of posts. We're not ranking them on views. We're ranking them on the actual social value that we talked about. And some interesting correlations here. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, once again, number one in the league in terms of social value, but right underneath them, the New England Patriots, which obviously made it to the Super Bowl, they posted 64% more in terms of total posts than that of the Eagles, but the Eagles still got another $4 million in social value, $63 million in total. Pretty impressive what the Eagles continue to do year over year.
Yeah, they're a machine at this point too, and obviously the continued success helps fuel them. That's why also the Kansas City Chiefs are, in the, I want to say, what are they?
Number 9. Yeah,
number 9. Which momentum is a thing, and engaging that fan base. But obviously, like Philadelphia sports fans are built a little different, but they have star power and they've got great content production and social strategy. So that really plays a big factor there too. Some of the things that jumped out at me here, though, is the New York Giants, for one. They're a team on this list. You had most of these teams were winning teams, and that's always going to influence social performance. It's something that anybody who looks at these reports that works the industry will acknowledge that's a factor here too. It isn't the end all be all, but people share content, engage with content more when their team is winning. They're happier. Social is a lot of it about identity, so they share this stuff more, and they engage with it more when times are good. The Giants obviously, had not a great record. They did have some better moments this season with some of their new young players and some other things that changed there. They also do a phenomenal job on YouTube with the Eli Manning show and some other kind of fun content throughout the year. And I think it's worth noting that, like, even to be, in the top half of the league with the record they had, says that they've got a strong strategy, a really engaged fan base. And they're doing a really good job.
And also, Malik Neighbors got injured pretty early in the season. But what's really helpful are the personalities. I mean, Jameis Winston, which could be the most engaging athlete in sports, Cam Scatterbar, they just had a lot of those friendly faces that fans couldn't get enough of as well.
Exactly. It's a big factor there too. And they do a great job of capitalizing on content that isn't taking place purely on the field, but is on the sidelines. So that's always something that I like to look at is the teams that are not winning, don't have a good record, who are still performing at a good level. And look, this is everything. This is across multiple platforms. You can dive in deeper, as I know we will, but and look at, okay, are there other trends or other teams that didn't win on the field but still performed really well on a specific platform too? But to your point, Eagles, Patriots, obviously always going to be, they have the fan base, they have the history. In the Patriots case, obviously, going to the Super Bowl, this is a regular season report, but that was a team waiting for, the return of a good season, and that fan base was ready to roll. So I'm always impressed with the work the Steelers do as well, too. I think consistently year in, year out, if we were to look at like a snapshot of the last 5-10 years of social,
they're always up there.
Yeah. So some good outliers there. Sorry, go ahead.
I also kind of break down this in tiers. So tier 1, I would say, are the Eagles, Patriots, and Steelers. And then the tier 2 for me are the Lions, Bears, Bills, and Niners. And then below that is kind of a drop off. In terms of social value, there's a larger drop off, 8 through 16, in my opinion. A couple more things I saw here, Dan, is the Chicago Bears had an incredible season. Talk about a fan base that's just waiting for good news. And Caleb Williams finally is a franchise quarterback after 25 years, but still on the low end on the total post side. So from a pure opportunity standpoint, I think the potential was there. Let's tell 19 different stories about Caleb Williams, maybe than just 3 or 4. Of course, all this comes down to resources, budget, full-time staff, etc. But I think when you have a magical season like the Bears did, and how exciting that was, if you could try to up your volume there, you're going to get more at bats and more opportunities to get the fan base excited.
Yeah, and speaking from experience there, our approach at the Carolina Hurricanes, obviously hockey, very different season structure than football. We did try to take a quality over quantity approach in terms of post volume during the regular season, because, yeah, there are limitations to how much you can produce, how many stories you can tell, and of course the cadence of games and the travel and everything with that too is a little different than the NFL. But once we would hit the playoffs, then it was like, all right, open up the
All
gates
hands on
and
deck. Yeah.
exactly post as much as you possibly can to capitalize on that. Now the NFL season is also, there's just a high engagement period regardless. The playoffs obviously are like that plus. But that could have been part of the philosophy here too. Is like, all right, we're taking that quality over quantity approach and continuing to build on it. Also seeing what works and what doesn't too. So I would expect the Bears to continue to be good on the field, but then also to build on that. I think we'll see them have generate more social value next year, as well as have easily like 10 to 15% more posts.
We've done a lot of shows about this topic, Dan, and like the WWE does a good job of, like, if there's a major moment between two characters, they, what I call, remix that same moment 17 different times. They have the streamer's reaction, they have the GoPro side angle reaction, they have the stacking reaction of the broadcasters and the in-ring moment. And I bring that up because I think in this new world where it's no longer social media, it's for you media, where the algorithm is going to serve you what you like, engage, and comment with. Finding more ways to remix the same moment, I think, is a huge opportunity for sports teams. If you notice that a big moment really took off for you, and I think the Saquon hurdle moment last year, I think Fox and ESPN and all the different outlets did a good job of, like, how can we continue to show this moment again and again and again in a different light? But that's what I'm seeing some of the top NFL teams do, Dan, is like, wow, this hit. How can we retell this story 5, 6, 7 different ways?
And it's a smart play. I mean, you do want to squeeze as much value as you can out of every piece of content, especially when it's something really, really special or unique. But that's where I think the vertical video piece comes in again, too. Whereas, like X, it's important to be timely. And if you post the same thing or the same variation of things too much, people are going to tune out. But with the way the algorithm works on TikTok, on YouTube, Instagram Reels,
Yep.
you can get away with having things that aren't as timely. And you can drop something that may be a couple weeks old, but is a remix of that too. So I think there's still ways to squeeze that value out of that in different formats. But yeah, I mean, WWE is always a good template for innovation in terms of how to get the most.
Well, last September too, Dan, which is right when the NFL season started, Justin Bieber released the album. He posted 97 times on Instagram in a 5-day period. I think Justin and his team understands that I'm just trying to get on the For You page. I don't care about the grid. I don't care about who follows me. I'm not worried about brand fatigue. I'm trying to tell this story that I'm launching this album in 97 different ways over a 5-day span. And it works. If your ultimate goal is reach and engagement, those different at-bats can really, really help you. Just the new way, the new algorithm, and no longer is it really hurting you in that engagement rate that we always used to look at. It's more about the total reach and engagement. I also thought the Packers did a great job just in terms of content output as well when you look at volume, getting in the top 10 there. And then the Browns, I mean, again, another team that did not have the type of season they wanted to have. I think they had 4 different starting quarterbacks, but then they posted the most content here out of the top 16. So that goes back to what you said earlier. Like, sure, they didn't have this season they wanted on the field. They didn't make the playoffs, but they still found ways to tell stories, and they still were able to crack the top 12, which I love when teams do not use the win-loss record as an excuse.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns have always been good at that back in the days of Ali Raymond over there. Like, some of the stuff that they've been able to do and get buy-in to do is always really impressive. And it's I don't want to say it's easy to do social for a winning team, because it's not easy at any team. Win or lose, but obviously losing is a little bit harder, and you're dealing with a different type of audience there. So I always like to flag those and kind of see what they're doing strategy-wise, what's resonating. You can learn a lot from the ones that have to struggle to get visibility.
Okay, so this is the macro level. It's all four of these platforms combined. And you were even saying, hey, in your seat, I still want to zoom in more granular to get actually the trend. So let's go to the next section, looking at Twitter specifically, Twitter and Instagram. So a couple of interesting points here. You see the Philadelphia Eagles #1 and the Patriots #2 on both Twitter and Instagram, respectfully. So they maintain their reign here on these two platforms in particular. I thought the Baltimore Ravens is really interesting. How many times just their volume in total on Twitter. I think when a lot of teams are pulling back, it looks like the Ravens are finding a lot of success there. And no Lions on Instagram. So the Lions are top 4 overall on a macro scale, but on Instagram didn't crack the top 10. So those are just a few things that I noticed, Dan, when I first glanced at these numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. And to address kind of the Ravens, they also they do such a good job across the full digital spectrum. So their website is really really strong. They have tons of editorial content. They do a lot of live streaming through X as well too. So I'm not surprised to see the post volume that high. I'm also not surprised to see the social value that high. Obviously, they had an up and down season on the field, but they always, to me, are someone I look at in terms of innovators. And I know they performed well on YouTube. They always do a really good job there with that. You mentioned the Lions as well, too. Certain platforms obviously resonate with fan bases differently. Being in the top 10 and on X is really, really good. They have done a great job. I know we'll get to a little bit on Facebook, too. To me, they don't get enough credit in a lot of ways, too, because a lot of people I think they I don't forget about the Lions, but I just feel like sometimes they get overshadowed by the other teams in their division. But they have consistently done some really unique and special things the past couple of years on social for a long time, and clearly that's clicking with the Facebook audience there. Kind of looking at this list again, just as for any type of outliers. I mean, yeah, you mentioned the Eagles and the Patriots, and they're just the perfect combination of a fan base that's highly engaged and strong social strategy and good content, and those things all kind of come together and make it so it's really hard to top that. But it's not always about being number one there. It's also about building a strategy that really works for your fan base. And
Right.
the Lions, okay, perhaps that is Facebook and leaning in there a little bit more, or perhaps it is okay, yeah, it's on X, but it's being hyper responsive rather than tons of content. So that stuff might not show up in these types of stat sheets, but there are still so many different granular numbers you can dive in deeper with to tell a story of hey, this is why we're doing it this way. This is how this is driving value, and this is why we feel this is the right approach given what we had to deal with this season.
Well, we talked about on X and Twitter. Listen, it's a lot easier to quote unquote post because you can just do a quick snarky tweet. But look at the engagements for the Eagles: 5.9 million engagements on X, 48.7 million engagements on Instagram. So talk about fish where the fish are. Put the fishing pole in the pond where you're going to get the most engagement, the most opportunity at reach and views. Views as well, about doubled on that of Instagram. And you talk a lot about, of course, Instagram, vertical video in general across all these platforms take the cake. So again, I know it's a macro thing and it's all about zigging versus zagging when you're looking granular, Dan. But one convention to say, if you're going to have resources, double down on vertical video across all these platforms, because that's what's getting the vast majority of engagements and views.
It's so much easier, I think, to engage on Instagram as well, and they've continued to create new different ways.
Yeah, a lot of this is the UX and UI of how easy it is to double tap and just how intuitive that is. You're right.
That's a big factor there. And another thing, takeaway at Instagram, we see social value, obviously a very important metric, but another the key functionality of Zoom is being able to track all sponsored content and the brand exposure it yields. So things like on score graphics or any type of sponsored content, or even the practice jersey patch that appears in content. And one thing we do see is on static content and carousels on Instagram, brand exposure just rockets up there a lot with sponsored content there too. So that's something to keep in mind as you.
And if you're a sponsor listening to this podcast, what are you recommending? I mean, you just said it, right? Like if I'm a State Farm or Verizon, a Visa, I want to be involved in your vertical storytelling and your social franchises that are vertical in nature, because I know it's going to get me more eyeballs and potentially more bang for my buck in terms of just saying, hey, whatever you guys think is great. Right.
No, exactly. I mean, if I'm a brand and I'm looking at some of this data, especially kind of getting even deeper in with it, I'm looking at, hey, okay, what static content as well is performing on Instagram? What's going to give me the strongest exposure and ROI on the campaign there. And we do see that quite a bit on static content, on X too, but to a lesser extent. So Instagram to me is like, Dave, if you would ask me uh, 10 years ago, which platform am I going to invest the most time and energy and resources in? I'm saying X hands down. I mean, yeah, it's not to say that Twitter isn't that anymore, but with where things are going with Instagram and the different functionalities that it has and the audience that it has.
It's the For You page and the vertical video game as we sit here.
It's just, it's too powerful to ignore.
Let's go to Facebook and YouTube because a lot of this is right what you just said. The Facebook Reels, the YouTube Shorts, the New England Patriots, good for them. They were either number 1 or number 2 on all 4 of the platforms that we analyzed. So they did win the Super Bowl on social, maybe not on the field. So we give them credit for that across these platforms. But again, being able to understand the power of YouTube and these teams in the top 10 that did that. I mean, we're seeing the Eagles at $21 million of social value, the Patriots $18 million, the Steelers $13 million. And I just want to point out as well, the difference in views though, the Eagles got a total of 72 million views on YouTube. Great. On Facebook, 579 million, almost a half of a billion views. And it just shows, like you said, like we still say this over and over again, but people still sleeping on Facebook. And this is just such a muscle that you can leverage as a sports team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look at the top 10 highest value social posts on Facebook last year among NFL clubs, every single one of them was a video and every single one was real. And that to me says like there's tremendous potential and visibility in what you can get here with this content. But one of the big takeaways there was also the type of content of those top 10 videos. I think only one of them had to do with highlights and game action on the field. Everything else,
we always talk about that. Yep.
On the sidelines or mascot content or things that were personality driven rather than highlight or game action driven. So that also says to me a lot that people want, they're going to consume the games in the NFL. They're going to watch and they're going to consume a lot of the content, but the things that really resonate and deserve and earn engagements and earn the views are the things that have that level of, I can't see this on TV. And this is different. This
well, and also, Dan, I'll take it a step further. I think also, okay, we have the core NFL fan that you're right. They watch the game and they're interested in like the alternate angle or the mic'd up moment. There's also this whole other circle that are casual fans that did not watch the game, could care less about the X's and O's, but they love how gorgeous the eagle being let out of the cage is, at the Philadelphia Eagles home arena, right? Like there's that idea of casual fans. What are they going to resonate with if they're not watching the game, but they still like that type of content? Is very interesting to me for sure.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, look, a lot of us old heads, we like the highlights. We like to know what went on in the game, the big plays, but the way that the younger demos are skewing, and a lot of the data says this, that it is that stuff that isn't what you're seeing on TV.
As Adam Silver said, the snacks versus the meals. They like snacking for sure on social media.
That's one of my problems too.
Exactly. So I want to go to the most valuable post, and I actually want to pull up here on YouTube. You'll be able to hear on audio as well. The top 5 most social valued posts. This is so interesting as you look at this list. First of all, 9 of the 10 of the most highest social valued posts in the NFL last season all came from YouTube. The only other one outlier was Facebook at number 6. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we're about to play this here in a second. The number 1 most valued social piece at over 2.7 million. They're number 13 on total social value across the league, across those 4 platforms, but they made the number 1 post. So, Lindsay, let's look at this one. 9.3 million views, Dan, on YouTube Shorts, 144,000 engagements, and here's what it was.
You disrespect one of my passes like that again, we're going to have a problem, all right? 2 hands. 2 hands. 180. That's it.
Mayfield looking for Ibuka.
Oh, what a
catch. He hauls it in. He was matched up with Sauce Gardner.
Yeah. He disrespected my football. I told him 2 hands, rookie.
Hey friends, quick favor. Can you please like this video and subscribe to this channel? If you get any value from this episode or the show in general, we'd really, really appreciate it. Back to the action. It's so good. It makes so much sense why that was number 1, Dan. And I think if I'm at the head of a digital social team at any team, I'm trying to figure out how do we 10x our mic'd up moments? Because as we've seen across the NFL, and we'll see a few more of these on this list, and across all sports, Dan, that we look at, people love themselves some sideline mic'd up moments. They love to see this stuff, like you mentioned, the broadcast just never shows.
Absolutely. I mean, it for the hardcore fans and the casual fans alike, it resonates with both of them, and it's something they can't get anywhere else. And Lord knows it's hard to do that. You got to run the microphone through the uniform and deal with approvals and everything like that. But if you're able to consistently grab that kind of content, look, there's the Baker Mayfield factor here. He's a great personality. He's someone who's just he thrives in that type of environment. And there's some players that are great, like we mentioned Jameis Winston before, like. There's certain players that just are electric on camera, whether they know they're being recorded or audio or video wise or not. And that's something that not every team is going to have Baker Mayfield, but there's a lot of these types of moments going on the sidelines, whether it's during practice or during a game. And you want to showcase that personality. And that's what people are after nowadays. They can get the game broadcast, the recap, the highlights, 50 different places, and then 10 different aggregator accounts.
Yep.
You get this anywhere.
There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of the fire hose of content, during the game or after the game is a lot. How do you stand out? This is another example we see across all sports, these intimate moments that are so cool that you feel like you're sitting on the sideline with a sideline pass. This was 2.4 million of value, 8.2 million views from the Detroit Lions.
You're not going to remember this, but a long time ago at Marvin Lewis football camp.
Oh,
Remember this?
yeah, I remember Marvin Lewis camp.
We were out here, and you were like maybe a sophomore or something. You told me I'm going to be playing on this field one of these days. Is this the first time you played here?
First time.
I'll never forget that conversation.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Obviously, a really cool moment. It feels like you have a sideline pass right next to David Montgomery in that moment. We noticed at the WNBA levels too. I think one of the highest social valued posts was a moment between Cheryl Miller and Kelsey Plum after a game, just a hug, an embrace. The feels, as I call it, people just love to peel back the curtain as they've always done and kind of get that Netflix documentary behind the scenes moment in that snackable form.
Without a doubt. And I think the other takeaway here is, and looking at the trend of a lot of this content is Facebook Reels and YouTube Shorts and vertical video, timeliness, being first with this or being even close to the moment in terms of that time, it doesn't matter anymore. They get swept up in the algorithm, and it's the kind of thing where some of these videos you might see them again in a month or two, and they might get swept up again, and all of a sudden people are engaging with it. The lasting power of these is really important.
And again, I think some teams would freak out like, hey, that was from our last game 2 weeks ago. People have moved on. Like, no. This is an evergreen moment that you can post 9 weeks after that Montgomery moment, and it still makes sense because regardless if you know the Lions record, you've watched any game this season, you can appreciate that somebody went up to this NFL player and said, hey, I remember when you were a child and you said you were going to play here. And that full circle moment, anybody can resonate with. I think oftentimes we get so caught up in our own brand. Oh, we already posted a moment like this. Oh, that was from last game or last week. That just doesn't matter anymore when it's evergreen in nature.
Still meat on the bone there. Yeah. And
still be
going back to the remix thing,
yes.
There's other ways to squeeze value out of it and maybe adjust the content in some way if you want to repost it. Sure, go for it. But even if it's not stuff that happened in games, if it was a Tuesday community visit or a Make-A-Wish situation, you don't have to do it. It's not about being first with this platform at all. It's about being good. And the right content will get caught up in the algorithm and will really, really great visibility, usually to, obviously your fans, but also to a bunch of people that aren't your fans and get a chance to get exposed
and
to
don't forget
player personalities there.
And don't forget to recycle that moment. Maybe post it 2 or 3 times during the same calendar year. Doesn't hurt as well because new people are going to stumble across it. Let's click this Miami Dolphins one. Again, still above 2 million, 2.3, 7.7 million views. And this is interesting right here. This reminds me of when I'm trying to fall asleep at night and I'm watching landscaping videos or someone cleaning out a horse hoof or something like that. And this is where I think a lot of brands forget. There's so many stories outside of the wins and losses, outside the X's and O's, that just posting a handful of times about your field crew can be, in this example, the number 3 most valuable post in all the NFL was a dude painting the field. Like, that's what we forget. And I think we're always thinking about, but we didn't score a touchdown this week, or yeah, but we've lost 4 in a row. Nothing, and I mean nothing, prevents you from posting content like the Dolphins did right there.
Exactly right. And I couldn't help but notice the Kia logo in there. So I'm actually popping on this platform. Curious if there is like some exposure value in there. I'm just curious if what it'll resonate as. But yes, I mean, look, it does. You don't have to overcomplicate these things. And a lot of times it's so easy to fall into the trap of like, well, is this content that I would actually like? And that's a great litmus test in a lot of ways. But that type of thing can resonate with a lot of people. And, and it's the kind of thing, if enough people engage with it, then all of a sudden the algorithm takes over and people are watching paint dry.
Well, and I think the Chargers last season as well, they went quote unquote viral. It may even be on this list, but just how they pack for games, that storytelling. So if you just think about, if you're whiteboarding with your teams, what I want you all to think about in the offseason is you can't use NFL players. We have zero access as a hypothetical. What are all the stories around this team we can tell if we could not post a highlight? We couldn't, mic anybody up, and just had to tell the story around the team. And that goes to your equipment managers, your field crew, your social team, your designers, like your front office. There's your parking lot attendants. Like there's a story there. Also the tailgate, right? Like your diehard fans. I mean, you can post thousands of times a season and not show one NFL player if you wanted to as a hypothetical exercise. I think that's a good way to go about a season, Dan. There's just so much, like you just said, meat left on the bone there.
There's so much more to building a connection with your audience than just focusing on what's going on the field. And I think, we've all learned that. I think a lot of this content reflects that over the years there. But if anything, this data highlights that there's a whole lot more stories you can tell. You don't have to overcomplicate it. And even if it doesn't perform well, even if it resonates with a small audience that, okay, this leads to maybe some season ticket membership purchases. And yeah, that's not exactly easy to attribute, but it's the kind of thing that's you want to engage a broad audience.
Awareness, attention, and engagements matter to move people down the funnel for sure.
Exactly right.
I want to quickly just show, again, these aren't going to be surprising to you, Dan, but this Patrick Mahomes moment from the Chiefs as well, 5.4 million. What I think is interesting is you can even coach your players like, hey, I noticed you do this thing at practice. I noticed you did this thing in the locker room. On Sunday, can I pull you and you can just quickly do that? Because there's something about pregame and being in uniform and things that make this special. So we'll play that real quick. And by the way, Kansas City Chiefs, please post that the morning before the first World Cup game. The different things like that where you can recycle this content. And the fifth example is what we just talked about. You had a great thought on the Giants in general. This behind the scenes Cam Scatterborough moment was awesome.
Yeah, let's go.
So we saw the broadcast angle of that, and that went quote unquote viral. But obviously, the remix of it is getting this lo-fi example of it. Very, very interesting. I think again, the one thing that stands out. We'll flip through the rest of this deck because that was really the meat of it, Dan. But 9 of the 10 most valued posts on YouTube Shorts, and just the views that were there, it's just so incredible. I want to get into Instagram, just some top themes. This is something that I would love to get your thoughts on. It surprised me somewhat. I think static score graphics, you and I probably would think like that was so 2015 of us. But there are some things like this, whether it's photo manipulations, whether it's Easter eggs in your content, whether it's simply just putting a score graphic, especially after a big win, that ends up becoming the water cooler moment where fans can be excited, share with others, brag to other people that may be arch rivals. That is just a hit that continues to work across sports.
Yeah. It's important. I know there's a lot of debate on whether or not you should post a losing score graphic, but even beyond the potential of
engagements are engagements, Dan,
Well, and the brand exposure value that partners receive on this content is unbelievable. And when you extrapolate that out over the course of a season, if you have quarterly score updates too, between the volume, the visibility, and the shareability of this content, even if you are not a team that has a winning record, there's still tremendous value here. And there was a time, and I know you remember these days, where score graphics were like throw-ins on sponsorship deals.
Yep.
And the data tells a way different story of the amount of exposure these get. They can be worth, like, to NFL teams, 6 figures or more. They generate a tremendous amount of brand exposure value for partners. So it's a great investment for brands, and not a lot of teams make this available. More should, because it's just one of the easiest ways to show that, like, all right, social can be a revenue driver. And if we can capitalize even just off this one post, right, this one across multiple platforms and multiple quarters, and it equals, X number of posts, per year in the regular season, preseason, and all that. Well, that makes it a little easier to point to that number and say, like, hey, you know what? We also need an extra video producer. We need an extra photographer, an extra designer, or an extra social person, so we can continue doing more of this and making more money off it.
And again, it becomes the easiest rate card that you can say is there's going to be 16 games, and we're going to do this every 16 times across platform. It's just a lot easier to both estimate what the actual views and engagements are going to be, but also it's that reoccurring social franchise that you can count on regardless of what happens on the field. Player milestones off the field, we see this work across all sports. And what we just talked about, when you're whiteboarding in the offseason, thinking about how you can, work up this list if you want to, from an engagement or value standpoint. What are all the stories you can tell? This is an example from the New York Jets, where they talk about how they prepared the footballs for their quarterback. This is what I'm saying is the equipment room has a whole social franchise that you can be really investing in to guarantee some of the virality. On Facebook, we saw mascot content, viral helmets off moments, those mic'd up moments on the sideline continue to work. And then anytime you have a celebrity, I know the Panthers on the NFL side did this a lot. Anytime a celebrity is in your building, finding a way to create content, finding a way to see if they will collab with you on content is such a great way, again, to touch that casual fan. And if you're going to have celebrities in the building, you're seeing that as a net positive. If, again, Common is at a Bears game, how do we create content that Common wants to share, but we also can share with our audience as well?
Yeah, that one Texans post is one of the, if you add up that piece of content across all platforms was posted on, I think was the most valuable or one of the top 2 most valuable pieces of content last season. And
wow.
The Texans did an awesome job with Toro and their mascot content as well. Like, I have some of the numbers in front of me here, and I think it was, 996,000 engagements on Instagram, 920K on Facebook. It was generated millions in value across Facebook, X, and Instagram. It looks like about 3 or 4 million almost. So all in all, like, you don't know what's going to click. Sometimes you got to try a few different things.
Yes.
And mascot content, whether you're winning or losing, can always resonate. And it's such a flexible piece for you to use.
That you can control more, right? Which is helpful.
Exactly. And off season, on season, all that. So, props to the Texans. I think they also, they led the NFL in haha reactions on Facebook last year, which goes to show you, like, look, being funny is hard. I try it all the time. And but it's something that they clearly have. To me, it says, like, they're producing content that is resonating a little more than alike. And
going back to the final score graphics, what I love when teams do is when they lose or they get beat bad, just the relatability of the copy is ugh, or, the copy is whatever, just like how a fan would react. And I think people resonate with that. Like, yeah, that was ugly. We also are going to admit that it's ugly. Not throw our players under the bus or anything, but like, that was not ideal. On to next week. That type of mentality is always nice from a fan standpoint.
I like it a little better than just posting final. Period.
Yes.
Yes. Have some fun. Be self-aware with it. A lot of times, though, that can cause some friction internally. So you have to obviously build the relationships and trust in order to say, like, all right, we're going to, try to have some fun with this or take a different, unique approach. And, we've seen the teams that have done it successfully and they've stood out really well. And they also have gotten a whole lot more value out of, in terms of for their partner, if there's a sponsor on that post, or just in overall social performance. So it pays to be human on these things.
Yes.
And definitely lean in if you can, if you're allowed to. Not everybody's allowed to.
Being a human scales on social. Who would have thunk it? Okay, so then let's go to X and Twitter. We know this. This is not any new news. The memes, the banter, the relatability like we just talked about. Also anything culturally relevant, international, cross-sport, we saw work really well as well. And then moving on to YouTube, listen, we just showed you the mic'd up moments for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the game prep. Again, I want to point out anytime your players are maybe participating in another sport or kind of juggling a football as if it's a soccer ball. There's so much opportunity there from a global standpoint that soccer fans are going, I didn't know Patrick Mahomes had a little skill like that. Or again, save that bad boy to recycle and post before a big soccer event like the World Cup. That's where I think you're really able to push out your content to a wider audience. All right. So finally, Dan, I want to just give some quick takeaways. I also want to get your final thoughts on this report. We did talk a lot about how YouTube is the value leader. Obviously, Instagram, 76% of total league engagements, but YouTube by far is that highest driver of social value. So much potential at views and virality on YouTube Shorts. So please, 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 at the very least, cross-post your verticals to YouTube. Speaking of verticals, that short form content just continues to work across Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. So that's where we would really recommend putting a lot of your eggs in that basket. And then listen, across all sports, we see this, but anytime you can mic up your players, anytime you can get behind the scenes, the mascot, the equipment folks, the groundskeeping team, like there's so much value there that I don't think enough teams across sports are really saying, listen, let's spend 3 hours and just whiteboard a bunch of ideas about all these things that this report proves that works. I'm curious, again, take me back to your time at the Panthers and Hurricanes. If you read this report for the first time as an outsider, what are some of the takeaways that you would take back to your team as you think about next season?
I mean, the first thing I would always say, and look, I've been on that side, we've downloaded these reports in the past, is you have to understand this is high level data. There's certainly some trends that signal, hey, we should be paying attention more to X, Y, or Z. Let's see if this actually is a fit for us. But data can tell a lot of different stories. And the more granular and deeper you get with it, it can really be a better fit for understanding, all right, what can we actually do? What can we take advantage of with the resources and buy-in we have? Where are some areas we need to be investing more in? And immediately you look at the Eagles and the Patriots and you're like, oh, great job by them. But what you start looking at is the teams in the middle, and you look at some of the little content trends and things that can help make a case internally for more access with players or coaching staff or the equipment staff, or more buy-in with certain things.
Because Dan, in that, sorry to interrupt, but in that seat, you'll hear from the president, hey, we want to really double our engagements year over year. And you go, great. But then from the coaching staff, I don't want you micing up my players. Well, those are two counter moments. But if you could bring the data to both parties and say, you're telling me increase engagements, I'm showing you that mic'd up moments are the number one performing piece of bucket of content across the league. Coach, are you open to reconsider that thought? Like, I know you had a lot of those conversations, and you have to show the data and say, I'm not just saying this to bug you or annoy you. I'm saying it because it works.
And sometimes there's a third layer in there. Well, two more layers. One is sometimes the owner is pretty passionate about, like, why aren't we getting the locker room speech video up immediately? And then, like, not only do you have coach and team president and owner, and then you, that's where data helps validate things.
Yes.
Especially like the social value. It's awesome for that. But really, if you attach a sponsor to that content, well, then it comes down to the bottom line for the team. And it's a lot easier to make that case when you say, well, this content resonates really well. We know we can measure the sponsorship exposure value in this type of content. And if we do this the right way and consistently enough, we're going to make an extra couple $100,000 here. Everybody's happy with that. And it's hard to say no.
Mic'd up moments brought to you by Bose all of a sudden becomes a social franchise 10 times a year.
Exactly. And look, you still have to do the work to build the relationships and build the trust, because you don't want anything to get out there that maybe the coaching staff or the players don't want out there. So there's layers of process. But if you can attach a partner to it and also be able to understand what the value could be when it comes to building a rate card for this, it makes it a lot easier to have those discussions. And that's where this report is valuable too. You can look at the value certain types of content is driving and say, like, this is where we need to be. Or if we can't do that, what can we do that's similar? Or look at the data in different ways when you have like access to Zoom. But attaching a partner to these, being able to measure that and build the rate cards and deliver strong results for a key partner too. I mean, that could be the difference between the naming rights on the building and not. Having that data helps. And that usually was the winning recipe for us at the Canes and at the Panthers as well. So data validates strategy, and it kind of makes it hard to argue against things that, okay, you might not be comfortable, but hey, here's 20 other teams that are doing it. And if we're not doing this, not only we're not making fans, but we're also not making money. And look, we want to win games. That's goal number one. 1A is to make money. We're a business too. So if something is standing in the way of that, we got to make a solution or change the expectations.
The three things I'm going to leave you with as a listener is the first thing is there's billions and billions of dollars still being left on the table from professional sports franchises not properly monetizing their reach and engagement. And what you just said, a lot of times it's because you haven't identified it as a quote unquote social franchise. You haven't put it in a deck that says, we can do 10 of these a year and here's what it's called. Here's a mock-up of what it looks like or what we've done in the past. Because these things as one-offs, Dan, you can't sponsor, because if you just posted the Baker Mayfield moment once, sure, it would have been worth $2 million for a Bose to be a part of that. But now the moment has passed and you haven't really, packaged this thing up for a brand to say yes or no to. That's what I still see a lot of teams missing, is that part of it. And then from a sponsor standpoint as well, there's still a lot of spots and dots and still a lot of media planning that says, oh my God, we're so pumped we're working with the Buccaneers. But there's not enough of like, ooh, wait, we like that content. How can we get involved authentically with that mic'd up content rather than you just slapping us on some press release or player of the game graphic? That's what I wish more partners would do, because I think there's another $1 billion being left on the table of sponsors, which they should use tools like Zoom to figure out what should we push for with our partners so we don't just get the least amount of reach possible on an asset.
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head both ways there. And before I go a little bit deeper on that, I do want to say, if you don't have the resources to produce this stuff, and look, that's where we were with the Panthers years ago too. And look, a lot of the content that you built for us in those seasons was sponsored, which then made the case for being able to get more content production and all that. But if you can't do it, that's where STN comes in, or to augment, to help with strategy, but to also support so the in-house team can still do a bunch of things. There's still plenty of room and opportunity there, but being able to have that vision and strategy and production support, not every team has that. I mean, you and I both know the secret of the industry is that most sports teams are small businesses with $1 billion egos.
Understaffed and overworked.
Exactly. And if there's ways to address that, and production takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, address that as well as monetize it, everybody wins at that rate. There's less burnout, there's more money coming in, and that's where an STN was crucial for us at the Panthers, and I know impactful for a lot of the NFL teams and brands that you work with. But going back to the Zoom point too, a lot of our brand partners, they use the platform for exactly as what you said.
Yeah.
All right, we see this MLB team has this asset that they're not making available for sponsorship. Let's jump
that one. Yeah.
Quickly say like, oh, this generated $1 million in brand exposure value. Well, why aren't we on that? Because that's going to look really good in our year reports there. And being able to value that stuff and understand the impact that it could drive. So it goes both ways, but being able to serialize that content is key.
Yes.
And then being able to make the case for it with data. It's hard to argue against numbers. It really is.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll leave you with on our side, Dan, which could be interesting for you as well, we're starting to be asked by these venture groups or these private equity groups, hey, we want to invest in this professional team. Can you do an audit of what their social looks like? And we're factoring this into the big number of buying 10 to 15% of this team. That's how big this stuff is getting now. We're literally people that are buying franchises. When the Lakers go on sale for $10 billion, if you don't think they looked at the social reach, engagement, and monetization value before they wrote that check, you're just not thinking about business and how this whole thing works. So again, 5-10 years ago wasn't even a thought process, but now these people that come up with billions of dollars to buy sports franchises are now looking into the revenue side of social media.
Oh yeah, social is a tremendous signal for that. And, it's important to be able to understand and appreciate those numbers, but also be able to position them in a way that does make that case there. And look, social's the front porch of a brand now, even beyond sports, but especially with sports. So it's important to make the investment there in terms of resources and personnel and anything else that does help you make the most out of it in terms of the content you produce and how you're able to monetize it effectively. So it could be the difference between a whole bunch of extra billions right there.
Well, Dan, I think the only reason that we even partnered together was I just wanted to hang out with you more. So I was like, why don't we just, get the band back together? But no, man, I always appreciate your insight. And I do think you brought a unique perspective of sitting in that seat, speaking with all the different power players inside of an organization. Anybody listening that works in sports can appreciate that, you understand like how these conversations happen, what data you're looking at, and how, again, now dive a level deeper into your actual data only and see what buckets worked and see what platforms are giving you the best bang for your buck so you can get the most ROI next season as well. So that's what the whole idea of these reports are, is just to illuminate what's working macro trend so then you can dive deeper into your micro trends.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the reasons I loved working with Zoom as a customer. And look, I went through competitors. I'm not going to name any of them, but like Zoom is great for the sponsorship measurement piece. It's like the most important part of things, but the social analytics element there helps build that bridge between departments of sponsorship and social, but being able to get real-time data across all these different platforms. You don't want to wait 2 weeks in order to optimize it. You can't. You need to look at something, 24 hours after or less to see what it's doing. And if also something like that Baker Mayfield opportunity pops up and you do have a partner on it and you have a really good win to share, you want to be able to get that to the media. But that's where like the real, like the micro data, getting granular, that can be the difference between getting a raise or a promotion, or it can also be the difference between getting more staff and resources. So that always really, really helps that, and a strong investment in good quality strategy and content.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. The 2025 regular season NFL social media report looking at YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X/Twitter. Dan LaRocca from Zoom, head of marketing. Appreciate all your insight and your time, brother. And we will talk soon.
Likewise. It was great catching up, Dave.